Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. Just got off the line with my friend Gordon Boettger, who I know many of you follow now. Had an epic flight with him a year ago in the wave in the Sierras. It was just a taste of some of the really big stuff he has done, including a couple flights over 3,000K out and backs in the Sierras and flying with NVGs, night vision goggles, and flying all night and all the next day. That big flight of his was, well, the two of them were over 17 hours. And back on December 19th, just a couple weeks ago, he did it again, except this time he went downwind, again with his buddy Bruce. They took off in Minden at 3 o'clock in the morning and got up in the wave in the Sierras, and then hooked a left-hand turn and flew across Nevada, hit all those big mountain ranges, and then flew across southern Utah and the Sangre de Cristos and crossed the entire Rockies, which has never been done on this kind of distance in a glider, especially at night, and then flew all the way to Dodge City, Kansas. It was over 1,100 miles. He spent a whole bunch of that time up above 24,000 feet, 24,000 to 28,000 in the middle of winter. Of course, it was freezing cold. And this is the story. It's the longest flight that's ever been done downwind in wave. So yet another record chalked up for Gordon and Bruce. And I just had to chat with him and find out how in the world they put this together. To give you an idea of where they thought they were going to go and calling it out in advance, he sent the retrieve team off a day before they even took off. So he kind of knew where he was going to end up, more or less, and nailed it. And it all worked out. I can't believe what Gordon's doing. It's super inspiring and a lot of fun. And you've got to head on over as you're listening to this to the show notes and see all his videos and pictures. And, they flew across the swell and some awful, beautiful country, but basically crossed half of the United States, a big chunk of it at night in a glider without an engine, flying mountain wave downwind. This is the stuff of legends. So cool. Enjoy. Gordon, you're a madman. I got the coolest message. It was about a week ago now, right?
Maybe on 19th. Yeah, just right before Christmas.
19th?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I got the coolest message from a buddy of mine, and he said, "Are you watching what your friend's doing?" And what friend are you talking about?
You got too many friends.
He said your name. I just went, "Oh my God, send me the link!" And holy cow, man! So take us through it. Give us the summary of what you and Bruce just did. Set it up for how you saw it coming. And
so basically, what this has like been a 40-year long dream of mine, and that was to essentially get up as high as I can in a mountain wave and simply fly as far downwind as I can. And, I live in obviously a really good place that allows me to do something like that. So I've been doing this, doing some of these attempts for years now. And the weather had just lined up just good enough actually on the 19th of December for me to do this. And the fact that I have the night vision goggles, I'm not limited to daylight now. So that, essentially any day of the year I can do this. So I've been just like hardcore. I've done some big flights in the wave along the Sierra, and I've done some downwind attempts in different gliders, but I've never gotten east of the Rockies. That was my goal, is to get as far as I could east of the Rockies. And there was a gentleman by the name of Jaak Kuttner, who was with NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research, and he was part of the Sierra Wave Project. And he was essentially the guy that invented, or not invented, he discovered mountain wave in Germany. And he passed away a few years ago at like 103 years old, but was still very, very active with mountain wave. And I met him several times, and he had this whole idea of, I think this idea goes way back to the 50s and 60s of getting up as high as you can in a glider and ended up in Kansas. And that's essentially what I did. Is I fulfilled his dream. I fulfilled my dream and a lot of other people's dreams. So it's really freaking cool.
This is some Wizard of Oz shit, dude.
It's
seriously.
Awesome. So, and I think bottom with this whole flight, the reality came true. The dream came true. And I also realized that we can go further with this using a few different methods, and one of which is utilizing thermals way downwind, east of the Rockies, because obviously east of the Rockies, the waves, there's nothing else to generate wave for the most part east of the Rockies. So, so that would mean gliding from the Rockies from a wave situation like I did into central Kansas, and then using thermals from like noon on and to fly another 400 miles or so. So two different
All right.
methods.
So what time did you guys take off? How far did you fly? What was your average speed? Give us some of the nuts and bolts.
So we
here.
took off at 3:09 local Pacific Standard Time in the morning.
Not when you and I did it.
Yeah. You're used to that, right? You've done that with me. So you know what that's like. So we took off at 3:09 in the morning. Intent was to try to get off a little sooner, but as you know, because you've been there, the equipment issue, and it's just ridiculous the amount of stuff that has to go in the cockpit, and so you really can't rush anything. But I had filed a flight plan with ATC, and I had an IFR flight plan in the system. And I don't know if people are aware, but I do have
let's look. Okay, so ATC, IFR, just to explain those real quickly for the non-glider folks listening.
Yeah, so for the non fixed wing folks that don't fly high, or basically what I'm having to do anytime you're flying from 18,000 feet above, you need to be on an IFR clearance, IFR flight plan. So that means you have to put a flight plan in the system and activate that system. And you're basically under the control of, under air traffic controls. You're basically under their control. So,
because you're in Class A airspace. I mean,
exactly. So Class A airspace,
basically the whole way.
Yeah. So Class A was, it begins at 18,000 feet, goes on up. So since this flight stuff, this wave stuff does happen above 18,000 feet, I worked years ago to get some letter of agreements with the centers, Oakland Center, Salt Lake, Denver, and the Seattle Center to go operate a glider, VFR in Class A airspace. So I'm operating under a letter of agreement, but filing an IFR flight plan per the LOA and operating VFR in Class A airspace with under the control of ATC. So I'm squawking, I'm talking to them, and they're assigning me blocks of altitude, and I do file an IFR flight plan. So that IFR flight plan I filed was basically followed the route that SkySight showed where there would be adequate wave to climb and to continue downwind. And I actually declared Garden City, Kansas, and I actually made that. That's an 18.
Ridiculous. You're giving away the goods right off the bat. That's just ridiculous.
Anyway,
oh my God, that's crazy. So you called it. That's where you called it. That's where I'm going to land.
That's what I accomplished my goal, and I overflew it. And I was talking to Kansas City Center, and actually, they were so awesome. So I overshot Garden City at like 11,000 feet, went through my finish gate, which is the 1,000-meter line. I went through the finish gate and hit it was a 1,700. It was a 16. It was roughly 17. It was Minden to Garden City was 1,661 kilometer declared goal. Pretty cool. And then I continued on to Dodge City, because what I can do for an FAI, so I can get 2 records out of this. So I qualified for 2 records: distance to a goal. So that's a pre-declared goal that I put in my flight logger, right? And then I had a free distance, which was essentially Minden to Dodge City, where I landed. So I qualified for 2 Continental records out of that.
How does it work in your world? And in our world, we have to have an observer for that.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
so we have a data logger, and so the observer, who was Jeff Resnick, he was there for the launch, and so he observed everything. And then we had landing witnesses, and all that logger stuff is preserved in the logger.
Those of you listening, you can't see this. I'm doing that whole thing where you put your hands on your head and you're going, mind blown.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Insane. And you set off your friends the day before you even took off for the retrieve, right? Or something?
Yeah,
because them out Thursday.
Yeah, this thing covered some miles. So it was a little kind of a ballsy move So first of all, I had to find a crew, and like 100% of this stuff is on me. I don't have a team that's doing the flight planning or any of that stuff or getting the glider ready. It's just a ton of work, and it's absolutely exhausting. And part of you, there's that devil on your shoulder that's wanting the weather to kind of fall apart so you can just go to bed and forget
Right.
about it and not have to spend
Yeah.
5 days prepping and losing sleep. Because
Every pilot knows
yeah,
about
you know the
that.
deal.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
then the other part of you is going, I want to go for this. So Gary Ittner, who happens to be a 17-time national soaring champion here in the U.S., he actually called me up and said, I'd be happy to do it. I got nothing going on. So
To run retrieve.
yeah, so I said,
he towed the trailer out
yep.
there and everything.
So I went down and met him at the Minden airport, got the trailer ready because I never use the trailer. I hardly ever use it. So I had to get the trailer ready and get my truck ready, and fill it up with gas. I said, all right, here's the deal. We're not taking off till Friday, but I want you to leave on Thursday and head east as far as you can because we'll probably catch up to you. And that's exactly what he did. He blew out of here on Thursday. We flew on Friday. He blew out at like 6 a.m. on Thursday. And I got a call like at 8 p.m. on Thursday night, and I'm trying to get some sleep, and I'm not sleeping, but I get a text from him. He goes, hey, I made it to Grand Junction, overnight in Grand Junction. So I'm going, holy shit. I hope I didn't.
Now you're vested though. That's kind of cool. Now you can't back out.
Right.
Now
yeah.
you
So now, and you asked me that earlier.
It.
It's like now I'm fully committed, and I think that was kind of a good thing in a way because now you're really driven. It's like, okay, I got to get this.
Yeah.
I got to at least get that far, to Grand Junction, and hopefully don't land 50 miles east in the desert. You just don't know with this game. You know the deal.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, so we covered this in the first show, and those of you listening, I highly recommend you go back and do that. That was the 3,000K, 17 hours up and down the Sierras, and you explained wave. But give a quick recap on the conditions you need, the conditions you had. Why does this set up? It just keeps going. I mean, the first thing I was thinking about when I read this, you and I could see it that night. We could see these wave harmonics, with the clouds and then clear and the cloud, and it just went as far as you could see off in Nevada with the night vision goggles that night. So I could see it, but I think a lot of people have a hard time imagining what happened.
Yeah.
Here.
So I mean, simply
if you're not flying up and down the range in wave like you normally do, or down in the Perland project down in the Andes, you're just sending it. And that,
what you're doing is you're
sense.
using a different wave system every time you climb. And unlike riding up and down the Sierras or riding up and down the Andes, as soon as you turn tail, you're out of here, go eastbound. It's like you're looking for a whole nother wave generator, a mountain or something to generate that wave. And for those people that aren't aware of how mountain wave works, basically you get high velocity winds that are running, for the most part, perpendicular to some type of topographical feature being, let's call it a mountain just to be simple, because that's what it is. But that air rushes up and over the mountain, and it basically spills down the valley floor and causes a bouncing effect, a lot like a boulder when you see a boulder in a river or a submerged rock, and you can see the harmonics, when that water flows over that boulder downstream, you'll see harmonics. And that's exactly what's going on with mountain waves. So the unique thing about the 19th is that what we want to look for on a downwind flight is kind of what we call a zonal flow, where the jet stream runs pretty much, it's like a 270 flow all the way to the Rockies. And that hardly ever happens. It's very rare,
Dead west.
And to get it to run, give you basically for the most part, a westerly flow from the Sierra to the Rockies is very uncommon. And you could wait, you could have that once or twice a year, or once every 2 or 3 years. So the fact that I wasn't working, had the whole month of December off, I had the opportunity to go after it. And I saw this about a week out. I was at home, and because I'm always looking at the weather. It's like a surfer's looking for a big swell in Nazare or something. I'm scoping out the jet stream, going, whoa. Wow, this thing's actually going zonal here. I got to keep an eye on this. And a lot of times, historically, I've seen it go zonal, and then within a day or two, it's whacked. You get this big dip in the in the low pressure system. So
What do you mean by that zonal? Explain that. And is that, when you and I flew, it was kind of southwest,
right,
as I remember. It wasn't zonal. It wasn't like that. But then we got hammered by kind of an atmospheric
right,
river, and that
right.
shut it down.
So
Is this pre, post?
this is
What are we
so
looking at here?
yeah, it's a prefrontal type system, and usually when you have when you and I flew, we had a pretty deep trough that came through. We had a southerly kind of a southwesterly type flow over the Sierra, which is favorable for the Sierras. But within, you remember when I said we've got to be on the deck before 1 o'clock because it's going post frontal. In other words, we're going to start getting a northwesterly flow, and so the whole direction of the flow changes, and you really don't want that on a downwind flight because the winds are so strong and you can't to deal with 60 or 80 knot crosswinds, and and a lot of times it shuts the wave down. And another big issue is the moisture content, and so there have been so many days where it looked good downwind, but you go, all right, once I get to Utah, the whole Wasatch is completely clobbered, or the west end of the Rockies is completely clobbered with moisture, and that's obviously a dangerous situation you don't want to get yourself into. So you don't even do it. So this day was lined up in the sense that the flow, the jet stream was basically running. It was just running in a straight line from west to east, for the most part, a 270 type flow all the way into Kansas. And then the other good thing, the advantageous thing, is that there was very little moisture. So those two things combined, that's when you start kind of locking on, and then you start looking at SkySight and seeing how feasible this is between getting from here to the Rockies, because Rockies typically generate very good wave. The Sierras generate very good wave, but it's the in between points, and that's exactly what we had on this flight, where there were some soft spots, and SkySight just freaking nailed it. And those soft spots mean you have to change gears, you have to slow up, be patient, take the slow climb, get high,
I love this.
and then because getting into the Rockies, you got to be high at those big peaks, and with those type of winds, I mean, I had people from Denver saying that stuff was, they had gnarly winds, that day. So you don't want to be in a glider over the Rockies, with 70 or 80 knot winds over the peaks. That gets to be really dangerous. So,
and what did you have in general? You said about 60 knots, kind of
60, 65 knots, and
so 80 miles an hour.
Yeah, which is good. And when you're, it's just same thing with you're flying at a much slower speed than you would flying up and down the Sierra. Like when we flew, we were just lighting our hair on fire. It was insane. Whereas this, you really want to stay up high. Your true air speed is much higher. Your ground speed is going to be much higher with that higher tailwind. And the higher you are, typically the higher the tailwind, the higher the wind speed will be. So what was your kind of average when you were leaving when you were going on glide, when you were leaving the wave for the next one? Give me an idea of your glide ratio. What do you get? With the 65 knot tailwind, you're over 100 to 1.
Oh,
no, it's insane. So,
you're just eating ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, Gavin, that's the difference between like when you're going up and down the Sierras like we were. I mean, you're trying not to pull the wings off because it's so strong sometimes. Yeah. Whereas this, you're flying it for the most part at best L over D speed because you're letting the wind do the work. So you're typically like 60, 65 knots, but you're clipping along with 160 knot ground speed or something, 150 knot ground speed.
And would you say the overall experience is less intense or more intense?
It's less intense in the fact that you're not operating. It's like taking a skateboard down a hill, and you're just about to get speed wobbles, when you're going up and down the Sierras when it's that strong, and you're like, you're just right on that line of V and E, and you don't want to hit turbulence, so you're kind of. Your hair's standing up on the back of your neck going, I hope I don't hit any bumps. Okay. But going downwind, it's relatively comfortable and you're not getting the air leaks in the cockpit, that you get when you're doing 150 knots indicated, 60, 65 knots downwind is very, very comfortable. The stress level that you do have to deal with is like, okay, now I'm looking for a different wave source, right? because as soon as you go down,
but you were talking about you've got this area that you got to clear. I mean, the main spine of the Rockies, Colorado, where you knew you were going to have
I'd never
this
done that.
zone
And
around Monticello. Yeah, never made it before, but you also got on Sky Sight, which I understand was just dead on.
Yeah.
Amazing. Shout out to Matt Scudder putting these things together for you guys. But you had this area that you knew, okay, we're gonna take hours climbing there if necessary.
Potentially, yeah.
You said,
I mean,
right?
and it's
you didn't have to do that, but you were willing to. You had to get super tall.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Because and it's wild looking back. Everything was just so textbook. Because even 3 days out, I go that 3 days before the flight, I said that wave in Monticello, west of Durango, because that whole area was soft. I'm going to have to take a climb. If I don't get up there, I'm landing in Durango, 100%. And that's
what does get up there mean? What, like 28 grand?
I think 24 would have been fine. And the other option for wave before I crossed into the Rockies, I told you earlier, was to go Mount Peel, which is south of Moab. It's a pretty big individual peak out there, and that was forecast with similar type strength of Monticello, maybe a little stronger, but that being further north means that you're jumping into a wider expanse of the Rockies, and that just to me was gnarly. And I go, I don't want to do that, because if I don't catch wave and I end up down at 16 or 17,000 feet, with 70 knot ridgetop winds or whatever it was, bad place to be, So what I did is I took the southern route towards Durango and then jumped in kind of on the southern end of the Rockies there. And then, because I had fallout areas to the south, Durango being one of them, and a few other spots. And so that was the safest route, I think. And it worked out absolutely freaking beautifully, so.
From your track log, which is really cool, and those of you listening, this will all be up on the post. You must go check all this stuff out, so it'll all be there. But on the track log, it didn't look like you didn't have a low save, right? I mean, it was pretty textbook, like you said.
It was. I stayed high. I took I was very patient with the slow climbs because I expected it. Impatience would have put me on the ground and way short of my goal. And, this being another thing, Gavin, I want to point out is if you don't have, if you've got to land by sunset, or if you can't go into the evening time, then you're pressed, and you can't be patient. You say, you have to say, well, I need to press because I need to be down before dark. Well, I've got night vision goggles. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I land in somewhere on the east of the Rockies, it's totally flat, right? If it's 10 o'clock at night, I could care less. It means I'm up for 18 hours. It's a long flight, but I'm willing to do that. And the fact that I had the goggles to put on again, if I needed to, was very comforting.
That night, you mean? Yeah.
Right. If I had, because I'm losing 2 hours of daylight going east too, so it's not in my favor. So I'm running against the clock, so to speak. So that kind of hurts you. And before the NVG days, this downwind flight, I never would have made an attempt because the days are way too short, right? So,
cool.
my downwind months before the night vision goggles, my downwind months were limited to pretty much, end of March, April, May, and that gave me long enough days to do that. But then,
so it just totally opened up a whole.
Oh yeah, now I've got a 2.5 month window versus basically a 12 month window now. I mean, I took off 3 days before the shortest day of the year, so
that's crazy.
It's insane, And I mean,
as a newbie, I've only done this once with you, and you had me walk around in your backyard with them, and it was just it makes you want to go have a party. I mean, those things, looking through those things is incredible.
It's nuts.
Yeah, they're nuts, but. You've got the experience now. Is there any difference for you in terms of comfort level between daytime and nighttime? I mean, is flying at night just standard operating procedures? There's no increased risk of, not risk, but is there any added tensity intensity to when you're flying at night, or does it just become part of the?
It's
because they're beautiful, but for me, it was super disorienting. You know, I mean, it's beautiful, but I was like, "Where? What the hell is he doing? Which way are we pointing?"
Yeah,
you know, the whole thing.
You know, if you do it infrequently, it's very intimidating every time you do it, because you're like, whoa, it's a, you know, as you know, it's a very claustrophobic feeling. You have a much narrower field of vision. You have to keep your scan going, and it takes a couple hours actually to feel like, okay, now I'm getting in the groove. This is comfortable now. Luckily, what I did 4 or 5 days before the flight, I took the NVGs and I took my buddy up, and you know, it was just dead calm. But we flew up and did a touch and go up into Lake Tahoe Airport, pitch black, you know, and that gives you a sense of comfort. But the key with these things, you can't ever let your guard down, you know. And one interesting thing about this flight, and I talked to Walt Rogers, and who's a meteorologist. I talked to a few people about the strategic preparation of, okay, when do I take off? Because this wave was working for like 24 hours, right? It was working so I could have taken off at 10 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, 6 in the morning. But what I was thinking about, where do I want to not be with those night vision goggles? And one of those places, because I hadn't been over the Rockies, was over the Rockies. I'm like, I don't want to end up there. I didn't want to take off at like 6 in the morning at a Minden and go, shit, now I'm crossing the Rockies at freaking 6 o'clock at night in pitch black. You know, I was just a little.
So finding a bomb out or an airport or something, it just adds too much.
Yeah, and plus you don't know what's going on with the winds. I could have a 30-knot crosswind, and that's typical with wave conditions. You don't know what you're dealing with, you know, with the winds. It's just, and I've had some gnarly landings on the goggles, and I'm sitting in the back seat, you know, just because I'm much taller. There's a lot more room in the back seat, and it's gnarly, you know. Then you're fatigued, you know, and you're landing in a crosswind. So I didn't want to put myself in a situation where I'm crossing the Rockies. I mean, it was gnarly enough to cross all of Nevada. You know, we got to Ely, and finally the sun started coming up, but the freaking cockpit was completely iced up inside. You know, I was like, Jesus.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about that in some of your pictures. So, how does that work with the NVGs? Can you?
Well, I had enough. I know you
don't like to scrape on that.
No, that just makes it worse. What happened? The clear vision panels typically work really well. This time there was a little leak between the clear vision panel and the canopy. There was a little, you know, in the foam or whatever. It had separated, so moisture had gotten in between the clear vision panel and the canopy, and that essentially stayed there for most of the flight. But yeah, you talk about disorienting. It's pitch black, and you got the ice encompassing most of the canopy inside, and that's another thing that you got to really be careful with, because you know NVGs aren't going to get you through a fully iced up canopy. Now you're flying on instruments, you know, so that's kind of what was happening. So I'm flying in wave, I'm flying on instruments, going from 160 knot ground speed to all of a sudden a 5-knot ground speed, parking in the wave, and it kind of threw the Alex computer off. It's going, what the hell's going on? So I was looking at the computer going, why is the map doing that? And then I had my ForeFlight telling me I was doing something totally different. So your brain your brain is over processing the stuff, and it's really fatiguing, and you have to stay totally focused, you know. And now you're still trying to you're talking to ATC, you're trying to stay in the wave, you know, and there's just a lot going on. You got the O2 thing going. So the first 3 hours was pretty hectic, you know.
And how cold was it compared to our flight?
It was definitely colder, you know, because we were up higher. We were operating. It seems it seems like the 24,000 foot point, when I'm above 24,000 feet, it just gets like
just an ice
exponentially colder. And then when we get down to 20,000 feet, I'm like, it's nice and toasty. It's nice down here. So it is nice to get low sometimes, just to kind of recalibrate your body and go, oh my man, you know, it's not so bad. Yeah, it was pretty. The first 3 hours was pretty gnarly, and there was the tow out was. We actually got ready in the hangar, got in the glider in the hangar this time, so we're not having stuff blow away on the runway and stuff. And then Melissa was out there helping, and so we had 3 people out supporting the launch, and we took off on runway 16, and when we pushed out, the winds were like 5 knots. It was like nothing. And I go, oh my God, this is so rare to take off. Such a pleasant way to take off and no wind. And as soon as we got to the end of the runway, it was like the winds were 230 at 18 gusts in the 32. It was freaking howling. It was just
Oh,
like, oh, and I go, man, I can't believe this. I got to take off in this crap. And so we had two people holding the wing down because it was like a 70-degree crosswind. It was just howling. And so I
oh,
got the motor started, and then I'm going, okay, I'm listening to the AWAS, listening to the winds. I go, what do I just sit here and wait for the winds to die? I go, it's not going to die down. So I said, the hell with it. And so, I just took off. And then we just got the crap beat out of us on the rotor. Just
right off the bat.
it was right into it. 3 a.m, and I hadn't slept in probably 2 days. And I just go, yeah, why do I
Oh
need this? And then the
man.
wave was really funky out of here, so it was a really slow climb, and probably 3 knot, probably 1.5 meters, per second, 1.5 meters per second
Yeah.
climb initially, and then finally we got up into the flight levels above 18, got my clearance, and then kind of worked our way down to the southeast and picked up a couple key point climbs that SkySight was showing, and those actually worked out well. So it wasn't I did a little deviation to the southeast first to get a climb over Mount Grant over by Walker Lake by Hawthorne.
And talk me through. So when we did it, it was you're flying in the wave
Right.
the whole. I mean, you're just in the
Right.
wave, and then so when you ping off and go downwind, you're making the jump to the next big feature. In this case, the Toyabees are the next really big
Right.
feature. We looked at that when you were
Right.
showing before we started recording, and you're getting over it. You're diving off into the lee. You're finding the wave, and then what are you doing? You're just pointing right
Yeah.
back upwind,
Yep.
and just
Yeah, you have to be
and
really,
what
you have to be really. So typically when you leave the wave, you'll hit the down cycle. So you're going to hit that strong sink. So you got to push over. You got to speed up through that
Yep.
and get out of there,
Okay.
because you could be going down, 10, 15 meters per second. It's crazy. So you got to get out of that as quick as you can. And then, so you negotiate your speed based off of your sink rate. So, like I said earlier, we didn't have too many massive sink rate situations, and we actually deviated around some of that stuff based off what SkySight was showing. And it was interesting because the deep blue areas that SkySight shows, that's heavy sink, and that's always on the leeward side of the lift. It's always downwind. And so what Bruce and I would do is we would fly, just like to the softer sink or whatever, and then go downwind. So there's a lot of kind of shucking and jiving.
So there was still some going north or going south. You're
Yeah.
still
And
you're
then I've got to
still
tell,
perpendicular to the
yeah, and
wave.
then I've got to talk to ATC and say, hey, request deviation left or right of course for weather, 10 mile or whatever. Because you're on an IFR flight plan, and they actually expect you to stay on that flight plan. They'll let you deviate from that, basically that line that you filed to be on. They'll let you deviate, but you got to tell them that you'd like to deviate, because there could be traffic you don't know. So you can't.
What does IFR stand for?
Instrument flight rules. So
Instrument flight rules. Okay, so you've given them a line with a bunch of waypoints.
Yeah, and that's essentially what I did. And those waypoints were those lift points that SkySight was showing. And so I had probably 18 points in my IFR flight plan, all the way to Garden City or Dodge City, and I pretty much flew that route, plus or minus maybe
crazy.
10 miles left or right of course,
That's so nuts.
So
that is so cool. And so one of the things that I always, when people ask me about our flight, I always, I say all the stuff that you expect to hear about it, but I always talk about the comms with the tower. That was one of my favorite things that night, was not only the comms with the tower with Oakland, but it was talking to the other jets.
Right.
And, at one point, somebody, United 908 or whatever going into San Francisco gets on, and he goes, hey, wait a minute, what? You're in this on purpose and you don't have an engine? I mean, that was awesome. It was just, he was like, wait a minute. It's the middle of the night. You're out here because you want to be? What the hell's wrong with you? That was so cool. Yeah. So did you have any fun chats like that as you're riding halfway across the United States?
So, it was fairly quiet to, once I got into Denver, the chatter got to be a lot more, and it was really busy because being, ski season, you had everyone flying into Aspen and all the big, the private jets, and then you had the commercial traffic too. But there was, there was a guy that he was, I don't know if he was Southwest or something, but he goes, hey, Denver, you got time for a question? And, I'm just flying. And he goes, Denver Center goes, yeah, what's up? He goes, hey, that glider, is that a glider you're talking to? He goes, yeah. He goes, where did he start from and how high is he and where is he going? He goes, well, he started in the Lake Tahoe in the Reno area and he's at flight level 280, 28,000 feet. And he's trying to make it to Dodge City. And the guy goes, holy cow, it's unreal. He goes, good on you. And what's interesting is one of the, like the Denver Center controller, since I've got the Instagram thing going, I've got the Starlink in the cockpit. And what's really neat about this stuff now with the technology is we're able to share these like live feeds. I mean, I'm up at 26,000 feet doing a live feed. I boot up the Starlink, boom, Instagram says you're live, and people are checking in from all over the world. I mean, Australia, Norway, and the Germans are all over it, and they're not getting any sleep. These are 9 hours later there, and they're just floored by what's going on. And so this whole thing goes viral, and then next thing you know, everyone's watching on FlightAware because I'm on an IFR flight plan. So now everyone can see what's going on, and they're going, holy crap, the guy's crossing the Rockies in the glider. So it's really getting everyone. It gives the gliding or the soaring really good exposure, and it gives even pilots that aren't glider pilots, gives them the just blows their mind that you can do this in a glider. And what's neat, the point A, I think we talked about this before, but the point A to point B stuff is really cool because people don't understand the triangles. I mean, we understand it in the gliding, the PG world. We get it, and the out and returns and that stuff. But your average Joe, they go, well, where are you going to go? Point A to point B is what they kind of expect, right? So this is a point A to point B, and so it was pretty, spectacular for a lot of people. And I mean, I still step outside and I go, holy shit, I can't believe I just flew this thing across the freaking Rockies,
It's just mind blowing. I mean, I remember getting out. I was sticking my thumb out in Texas. We were down there trying to break the world record a bunch of years ago, and this guy in a truck and his girlfriend pulled over, and I was trying to just describe. I was just in the middle of Texas, and I mean, and compared to what you're doing, this is ridiculous. This is paragliding speeds. I'd gone 300K or something.
But that's, day. I mean, it's all relative.
In a blink of an eye, it is. It's all relative.
Huge,
but
man.
It was so funny when he was, and I was explaining to him. Okay, yeah, we took off in Hebronville. Down by Corpus Christi, and we towed up, and then, and then I flew here, and he was just going, so you jumped out of an airplane up above us and landed right here? And, no, it's 300K south of here. And he's just going, wait, but where's the motor, man? Where's the thing? Where's the stuff to do it with? And no, it's on my back. It's just people just wait, what?
I mean, if I could do what you guys do with the paraglider, in other words, like just push the damn glider down a hill until it has enough airspeed to get off the hill and then get up and wave and do that. Could you imagine how cool that would be? Just completely motorless,
How you do it is pretty. But hey, I got to ask, you said something when we first started off, and you said, you might get 1 or 2 days like this with the zonal flow a year. Mm-hmm. So obviously really rare, really special. But also, I'm trying to just think. I mean, I've been a lot of places on the planet. There can't be that many places on Earth. How many are there that provide for this kind of thing? I mean, Nevada's the most mountainous state in the lower 48. Right. I mean, it's a
really good question. So South America is out of the question because you'll end up in the water.
You got one. Yeah, you got one range.
And so there's. As far as I know,
can't think of anywhere. Can you?
There's no other place in the world that would allow you to do this on a downwind attempt, going downwind, not crosswind and wave like in the Andes.
Sure.
But to use a full-on downwind attempt, I think this is probably the best place in the world. I mean, from logistics and everything else, and just topography, the way it's laid out. Now,
I guess topography-wise, Canada's pretty similar. You've got all our ranges kind of extend up in there, but you don't have Nevada. You don't really have, BC, Alberta to an extent, and their Rockies spine is the same as our Rockies spine, but I just can't think of anywhere
Yeah, I don't.
anywhere that
That's
this
yeah.
exists
If
like this.
anyone listening has any ideas, I mean, throw them out. But
Yeah, yeah. Let us know.
it's funny. I always mention to people. I said, i- if we can, if we just had one mountain in the middle of Kansas, imagine what that could
Yeah,
have done for me.
you could go.
Yeah, go.
Could you go to the East Coast? Could you go all the
Um.
way? How far can you get
Uh,
from 30,000 feet at 100 to 1?
so well, I mean, I went as far as I could because, I got to 28,000 feet and there might be a possibility for me to get up so let's back this thing up. I'm limited to 28,000 feet because flight level 290, 29,000 feet, there's this thing called RVSM, reduced vertical separation minima. And that basically allows airliners or traffic in those altitudes from 29,000 feet up, allows them with a 1,000 foot vertical separation. So
Okay.
because of that, there are tight equipment like stringent rules and on what's got to be on board, like dual autopilots, and all kinds of stuff, which a glider can't have. And so when I
Okay.
when I established the letter of agreement that I have, they said you're not going to be allowed in RVSM airspace.
Okay.
And so that might.
So 28's your limit.
Correct. That might change. And the only time I would need that to get above 28 is on that final stretch off either the Rockies or the Sangre de Cristos. And if I get above 30, I'm going to need a different O2 system, which I have, a pressure demand system. And I can equip the glider with that. And so the possibility, let's say if I do get into RVSM airspace, basically I'm allowed above 29,000 feet, then I could essentially climb up to 40,000 feet and go downwind from there. And then that's a whole different ballgame. Now you're clipping on another 10,000 feet on top of what I'm allowed right now. That's another, at least 200 miles, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, 200, 400 miles.
So yeah. So that might be in the cards in the future.
But as it stands, it's basically getting to Kansas midday on a thermal day.
Right.
And
so
then you can keep
exactly.
going. Then you fly thermals till the end of the day.
Correct. So when you do that, you're going to have to strategically plan your takeoff time, right? So you don't want to get there. You don't want to get to Denver at 6 p.m. because guess what? You're going to have to park in the wave all night long and sit there till the next morning. So now you're going to run into battery issues, O2, and then fatigue type situation. But if you were to take off, let's say at 8 p.m. here, and then give yourself 12 hours to get to the Rockies or the Sangre de Cristos, climb up, so you're doing an all-nighter, from all the way to the Rockies and then get to the, let's say the Pueblo area or something, and get there at like 8 or 9 in the morning, take a climb up to 36,000 feet and then glide for 2 or 3 hours and then end up somewhere out in Kansas. Or the other option would be to run down the Sangre de Cristos in the wave crosswind, get in the Albuquerque region, climb as high as you can, and then end up in Texas because the thermals will be a lot better. And then, and then you're going to end up in east of Dallas or something like that. And then if you could do that 300 or 400 miles in thermals that way, then you're well over 2,000 kilometers, possibly 2,500 kilometer downwind flight. So
what's the record?
2,300 kilometers roughly. That was done by Klaus Ullmann down in Argentina, but he flew along the Andes, so it was not a downwind flight. So he flew from the southern end and flew.
But that's the longest one-way flight, but he was flying wave.
Correct. That was all. Yeah, it was all done in wave. So
was this flight that you and Bruce did the longest downwind wave flight that's ever been done?
Yeah. That's a good point. I never thought of it. Longest downwind, yeah, and I think it's by far the longest flight in the northern hemisphere. Straight out anyway. But yeah, it's the longest downwind flight. Yeah, it's the longest downwind flight.
How much did this beat yours by? Because you've done some really long thermal flights.
So I've done some downwind flights in the wave in my old duodiscus glider, and then before that I did some in a 1971 Kestrel 17. I ended up in Steamboat, Colorado. That was a single place glider, but that was before we had SkySight, and so everything was kind of just visual cues. I mean, that's a whole nother, that was a gnarly flight with, holy crap. But that ended up, once I got to the Wasatch, a wave shut down and I ended up thermaling the rest of the way from basically the Wasatch all the way to Steamboat with that glider.
Any downside as I mean, as a purist and someone who's chased this your entire life, is SkySight kind of like having Google goggles? I new pilots come to me all the time, and wouldn't it be great if Google made goggles that you could see the thermals? And I go, no, that'd be awful. Right. It would end the magic of this whole thing.
I agree. Nothing's 100% with these weather models, right? There are times where you look at something, you go, okay, well, it's actually a little stronger over here. So you just don't know. We're kind of testing testing the accuracy of SkySight. I mean, it's never 100%, right?
Sure.
But on this day, it was, I would say,
awesome tool,
very accurate. And it's funny because if I start, after this flight, I started really thinking deep about my past flights where I didn't have SkySight. We're old school, right? We're looking out and going, okay, that peak right there should generate wave. Let's say there are no visual cues like rotor clouds or lenticulars, which I've had a ton of times. I haven't had any cues at all of waves. So I'm visually looking at a mountain going, okay, well, I think there should be some there. And I cross over a nice solid range. I go, and there's nothing. I go, what the hell's going on? Why is there no wave here? It's perpendicular to the wind, and so you keep on going. But then you kind of think, well, I wonder if it was, now looking back and having dealt with SkySight, it could have been 3 or 4 miles to the left or right of me. Yeah. I don't know. And the number of times I parked in, a half meter wave climbing at half a meter, now I'm going, God, I wonder if it was like going up like 5 meters per second, a few miles away. You don't know that. SkySight aids you in that, and going, okay.
So it's really sped you up. I mean, it's really helping you crunch
and then
miles.
Especially at night, it's a huge help because if you have no visual cues, you're kind of doing on the night vision goggles what you're doing, back in the day, and when you didn't have SkySight, you're just looking out and you're trying to hit those peaks. Now, what SkySight does, it's good, is you learn from these models, because I'm looking at the stuff almost every day, and you kind of remember, like, that peak is always working. That seems to always work. Like the Toyavis over near Hadley, that seems to always work. Wheeler Peak, southeast of Ely. I've gone downwind in the Duodiscus. We ended up in Gunnison, Colorado on that flight. And I used the same 2 points. This was 10 years ago or more. And I used the same lift points that SkySight showed me on this last flight. Just west of Wayne's Wonder, Bryan Head ski area, that whole, boom, it was going off. Just like, so, once you start marking those points or remembering those, you can almost kind of count that they're going to work with that kind of a flow, with that kind of a direction of a flow. And it's pretty neat. And I think we can tap into this thing and go further and things like that. And I've got other things in mind, some 3-turn point, 3,100 kilometer flights. So,
I know you do. I know you do. Like I said, my bag's packed right here, bud. So what is it when you said for 3 days, basically, the 3 days leading up to this, you got hardly any sleep. It was exhausting. Yeah. I read your, and we glad your flight report, just, you guys were worn out, and I experienced a fraction of that. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. I wasn't even flying anything. I was just sitting there and it was tiring. When you, a week afterwards, when you think back on these just monster objectives that are so bitchin', what is it that really stands out? Is it the chatting with Bruce in the cockpit? Is it the challenge? Is it the visual? I mean, your pictures of the lenticulars and the ice in the cockpit. I mean, you've been dazzling us on Instagram ever since I discovered you a while back. And you flew over the swell this time, and you flew over the Rockies. I mean, you're covering some incredible terrain. Well, but what is it that sits with you? What do you tell Melissa when you guys are having one of your epic dinners, jalapeno poppers?
I'm still I mean, still this day, I haven't been doing this for quite a while now, but I still am just blown away how, whether it's a paraglider or a sailplane, how we can harness this energy and take advantage of it and go as far as we can. I mean, it's mind boggling. It's just like, I just pinch myself and go, this is just freaking insane. It's nuts. And, you know, we talk about technological advances and things like that, and definitely we're using those to our advantage. I think it's kind of across the board, and it's hasn't taken any of the reward out of it, but it's just mind boggling. The scenery and just the emotional ups and downs you go through. The holy, that little devil is going, yeah, I want everything to fall apart so I can just not worry about this. I just want to be a lazy human and go to bed and not stress. But the reward, I mean, that makes it that much rewarding when you go through that suffering, you know, those ups and downs, those low points in the flight, like, oh, holy crap, this,
What have I done?
because there's nothing ever runs perfectly smoothly, and you're taking this machine and harnessing the energy and flying as far as you can with it in these crazy, in this just really extreme, harsh environment, and you're doing it. I'll call it relatively safe, and it's relatively in relative safety, but and then when you get to destination and then to hit a goal like Garden City, I actually made the goal. I mean, it's like, that was like, wow. And then when you touch down, you go, I can't believe this thing's in, like, here we are, unfazed, unharmed, no frostbite. The glider's in one piece. We feel good. It's a really cool feeling, and I think anyone that does cross country stuff realizes or knows what I'm talking about there. One of the things that was interesting, before I forget, was, we talked about Gary Ittner hauling that trailer out the day before, and we talked about it yesterday on the phone. But I think one of the one of the most fascinating things about this flight is that, we end up landing, and within 5 minutes of me getting out of the cockpit, I called him on the phone. And keep in mind, he drove from Minden, right? I called him on the phone. I said, how far are you? He goes, I'm 5 minutes out with the trailer. I'm like, what the hell?
Stupid.
All the way,
That's stupid.
all
That
the way
is
to
incredible.
Dodge City, So that was pretty cool. But
folks listening, if you're in Europe or something, pull up a map. You got they flew from California to Kansas. This is incredible.
It's funny when I did this podcast, or I did an interview yesterday with a couple German guys, and I said, for the Europeans, and if you put it in perspective, that's like, I used Frankfurt as kind of a start point. That's kind of our Minden. I said that's like flying from Frankfurt to Athens, or Frankfurt to Istanbul, Frankfurt to Portugal, or almost Frankfurt to almost Moscow. So that kind of Melissa actually thought about it. She goes, why don't you put a ring, or give the Europeans some perspective, because this freaking country is so bloody huge, it just goes on forever.
I mean, it's
but
a long way.
It's kind of neat to hit it halfway across the country. It's been a dream for so long, and it's pretty cool,
That is really cool. So, Gordon, man, just unbelievable. So epic. What an adventure. I was watching the whole thing going, you just gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. That's what they're doing is impossible. But it's not. No, you're doing it. And it's truly amazing. And I can't wait to fly with you again. Thanks for sharing all this.
I love your energy, man. I love your energy. I love it in the cockpit. It's just, Melissa keeps going, you got to get Gavin back down here. You two are like brothers in the car. You guys just get along. You guys have the same energy. You're just hooting and hollering, just tearing through the sky. What do we have, a 200 and something knot ground speed that day?
Oh my God. Yeah, 240. Remember, because the guy from Europe said, hey, you guys almost hit 300K an hour or something.
No, 400, I think it was.
And you said, you want to see something?
That's right. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, we'll get you up.
That was cool. Did you do some loops at the end of this one?
No, I didn't want to screw up the data logger.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Get it on the ground.
Well,
But
that's why you don't want me on those flights, because I would have been, come on, man,
that's
give me
right.
some loops.
Yeah, that was kind of unexpected with you. Did I even tell you I was doing that? Probably not.
Well, no, that was
Sorry
awesome.
about
that. No apologies necessary. I loved it. You could hear it in the video.
That's right.
That's awesome. Gordon, thanks, man.
All right. Thank you,
I
Gavin.
really have been dying to talk to you about this one, and congratulations to you and Bruce and your incredible crew.
Thank you, sir.
And your wife, and big hugs to Melissa. I can't wait to see you guys.
Hey, thanks again for taking your time and sharing this with you awesome paraglider guys. You guys are awesome. I love it. So someday I'll have to do a tandem with you or something.
Yeah, man, absolutely. For sure.
Collapse that thing with my weight. So anyway. All right, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Nice talking to you.
All right, see you, Gavin.
If you find them Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. All of them incredibly important to keep this show going. You can give us a rating on whatever platform you listen to. You can blog about it on your website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your friends. I know a lot of good conversations have happened that way, and of course, you can support the show financially. The show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, storage, music, behind-the-scenes cost, and all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. We put out a show every 2 weeks, so if you gave us $1 a show, that's $25 a year. Quite a bit less than a magazine subscription and way less than a latte a month. You'll notice we don't have 10 minutes of advertising at the top of the show, which we get asked to do all the time, believe me. I believe advertising is a pretty toxic business model, and I want you, the listener, to know that these conversations are just authentic people giving their opinions, and we aren't being swayed by brands. But that means we rely on you, our listener. If and only if you can support the show and it doesn't hurt your pocketbook, we'd really appreciate it. Go to the website to find various ways to support the show through Patreon or other platforms where we've gone through great lengths to minimize fees so your money gets directly to us. Becoming a subscriber gives you access to all kinds of bonus information, little nuggets that don't make it into the podcast, extra content, our Ask Me Anything shows, and a lot more. We don't put anything behind a paywall and never will. If you can't afford to support the show, just send me an email and I'll set you up with an account, no questions asked. Hopefully someday you'll be in a position where you can. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. We'll see you at Cloud Base.